Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Tuesday Tips brought to you by Hunt Lifted Official. I'm Carter, joined by a new guest. Co-hosting with me today, we got Dr. Christian Nelson, fellow member of Hunt Lifty here, joining us for the first time on the podcast. What's going on, Doc?
Carter, thanks for having me, man. I'm super excited for this tips episode here. I've got some tips for training and recovery, especially that I think people are really going to be interested in. So I'm excited to get into it.
Heck yeah, man. Real quick before we jump into the meat of what we're talking about, you joined the team recently, right?
I did. I did. Yeah, Kerry's been after me to join the team for a while. And finally he's like, dude, you got to come on. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And then I jumped in the group chat and somebody was talking about plantar fasciitis. So I'm like, oh, Lord, that's easy. It's easy to fix. It's so easy. People suffer with it all the time. And it blows my mind because at least to me, it's so easy to fix. It's like I want to pass on those easy things you can do at home. They'll knock out 80, 90% of it. And the ones
Heck
that are
yeah.
really like if you try all that and then you really still need help, you really still need help. And then going to the doctor will help you.
Right.
Almost guaranteed.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And this is this is a really good topic. I saw you in the chat helping somebody out with their plantar fasciitis. Obviously, that's
Yeah.
a uh do you call it an injury? What do you call it? What do you label it as?
Yeah. So it would be a lack of recovery is actually how
Okay.
I look at it. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like you drove the car too hard and you didn't put enough gas back in the tank.
gotcha. Yeah, and that's
That's
something,
that's how it stacks up.
a lot of folks who are active have experienced in some form or another, especially people who are getting into running. And we just finished up Hero Week here,
Yes, we
um,
did.
where overuse and repetitious movements that you may not plan for, and
Hmm.
especially focus on the recovery from afterwards is a very high volume week. Um,
Absolutely.
I've got some tendonitis in my left knee right now
Hmm.
that's bugging me a little bit, but plantar fasciitis, that's one a lot of folks have dealt with, man. So I thought this would be a
Yeah.
good one to talk about and tackle. So maybe you can talk about a little bit of the background of the actual affliction, and then we can
Sure.
start moving into symptoms and recovery.
Absolutely. I'd love to. So, the first thing I want people to know is that I do not look at training or workload as a bad thing. I believe that the body is anti-fragile, that you're not just resilient, that you're anti-fragile. The more you suffer with reason and that you go and embrace the training and the hardship and the miles, the stronger you get. We see this clearly from the weight room, and so it's no different if you're on the road. But we do have to account for how the body actually works, and we have to allow for how the body actually recovers. Now, I annotated some pictures that I sent to you. Hopefully, the editor will be able to insert those here. So, one of the first ones I want to throw up is, if we can, is I want to make sure that people understand that the arch is a part of the whole leg. I want you to think about from the toe to the knee as being one unit, and it's a shock absorber. So you know how kangaroos can jump and they have like all that elasticity in the knee. Our knees bend backwards. I'm sorry, our knees bend forwards. Their knees go backwards. But if you translate that down towards like kind of in the ankle, from toe to ankle to knee is supposed to be a spring that's bent, and it's supposed to be the shock absorber. If you don't have that shock absorption, it travels up your knees into your hips and starts just pounding on your hips and your low back. And then if the curve in your low back is not sufficient, it goes up into your neck and causes headaches, degenerative problems. It's all very clear if you know what you're looking for. But what I really want to focus on is kind of from the knee down today, and just kind of keep the scope of the conversation a little smaller, a little bit more focused. Um, but the what people refer to as plantar fasciitis is recurrent micro injury, which could lead to growth, followed by improper recovery, which makes that repair almost impossible. And one of the main details we need to pay attention to is that there's a nerve and a blood vessel, a set of blood vessels that go underneath a muscle called the abductor hallucis longus. That's Latin for makes your big toe stick out towards the other big toe. That's just what it means. So don't worry about that one. But that muscle there's the nerve, the blood vessel, and the vein and the artery go underneath that muscle. And if that big toe, we'll pretend that this is my foot right over here. If that big toe starts moving over towards the side, it stretches that muscle which runs along the inside that medial arch, and that blood vessel runs right along underneath, and we have some pictures for this to kind of highlight that. We'll see if we can get those thrown up there. And if that muscle gets too tight, then what happens is it cuts off blood flow. It decreases the nerve supply to the muscle, so the arch can't operate like it's supposed to. It just doesn't get the instructions. It's like somebody kinked a
Mm.
it's like somebody kinked like a coax wire or like a fiber optic cable. You take a fiber optic, you kink it, you bend it, something like that. You just don't get the same information. So now the arch lets go, and that foot just, instead of having a nice arch like this, it flattens out and it starts collapsing, and the toes splay out to the outside. I've got another picture in there that shows really beautifully some of the changes that can be expected. And so, in order to fix that, we need to understand what's at play, how to get that arch back, because you can. If someone has told you you can't get your arch back and it's not surgical and it hasn't been fused either by a surgeon or by nature for like, yeah, if it hasn't been fused, you can get the arch back to some extent, guaranteed. It's a soft tissue problem. And so I guess that's one of the lies about plantar fasciitis and about the arches of the foot that I want to dispel first and foremost. Here, let me set this to silent so that it doesn't interrupt us. Uh, really, first and foremost, the arch is a spring. It's not like the arch of a bridge. In the past, people have approached it like it's the arch of a bridge. It's static. It doesn't move, but it's not. It's a coil. And so once you make that mindset switch and you understand that it's a shock absorber, then you treat it completely differently because the vast majority of the load is a soft, it's absorbed by the soft tissues, by the muscles, by the fascia in the foot. So um that's where it comes in. And then if you don't have blood flow and you don't have nerve supply, that's like trying to build something without a blueprint and without trucks supplying you the right materials. You wouldn't expect a job site to do very well if it had no foreman, no blueprint, and no materials.
Right.
But we pinch off the blood flow and the nerve supply to the inside of the foot there, and then expect the arch to heal like it's supposed to. So it's not going to, or if it does, it's going to do so very much more slowly. And so people find the rest of their body recovered from the workout. Maybe they went for a run, their legs, their glutes, their back, their arms, everything else that they used to run, good to go. Foot, trailing, really lagging. So that's kind of how I look at it. And then the fix is basically to undo those things. I really hope we get a chance to insert this picture here with the toes curled up and the big toe deviated towards the other toes there, because it just shows so beautifully how the arch drops in, the big toe turns out to the outside, and the little toes start doing a hammer toe motion like this. And that's really because most people don't know that you have shin muscles.
Right. Right.
And so it forms a big triangle. You have the calf in the back, you have the foot arch muscles on the bottom, and then you have the shin muscles going up the top of your foot and into the front of the shin towards the outside of the leg. And if those get really tight, they draw up the toes and it forces the arch down. So that's kind of the problem there. An easy way to tell if you have plantar fasciitis is if you have a stabbing feeling in the foot near the heel on the inside. First step out of bed in the morning, classic presentation for plantar fasciitis. If you've iced it and it feels good, you have plantar fasciitis, which is inflammation of the bottom side of your foot. However, if you ice it and it's not getting better and it might feel worse, you could have plantar fasciosis,
Hmm.
which you'll notice the slight change there. It means not just inflammation, but cell death.
Hmm.
So there's so much blood flow restriction, so much nerve restriction that the cells are dying. It can get pretty severe. And a telltale sign for this is if you feel like you have to take your fingernails and dig on the inside of your foot, you're like, there's something in there I have to scratch out.
Yeah.
That means your cells have devolved in health to the point where your body doesn't recognize it as self anymore. They're dead. Your body it considers them foreign, and you're trying to scratch them out of your body. If that's happening, you don't use ice. So I think this is a good segue. Let me ask you if you have any questions there, anything I need to clarify. I hope I'm not going too fast with this.
No, you're good, man.
All right.
I coach cross country in the fall. I'm a high school teacher, and I
Okay.
coach cross country. And when I
Yeah.
first started coaching, I was not a runner prior to my
Hmm.
boss being like, "Hey, you're going to coach cross country now." I was like, "All right." I was like, "Well, I'm going to run with the kids because I'm not just going to coach from the sidelines or a golf cart or whatever."
Good
And
man.
I got plantar fasciitis pretty bad. I had it for I dealt with it probably for a year,
Okay.
and I think I had to shift my mindset. And a lot of people probably when they first get or decide that they have plantar fasciitis because that first step out of bed, like you were saying, it was taking me back. Like that, it can be really debilitating. Like it was severe pain. It was
So just,
not good. Yeah, it was awful. Uh,
yep.
Mine got
Sucked.
so bad. I slept with the boot that like flexed your
Yep.
toes up to your knee. Had
Yep.
to strap it.
Yep.
Like it was bad.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think like maybe you can talk about you know briefly like some of the mistakes that you see when people are trying to
Hmm.
address plantar fasciitis. Like
Yes.
I feel like the advice I got at the beginning was like the classic RICE acronym, right? Like rest it,
Sure.
isolate,
Sure.
compression, elevation, and that's not
Mm.
really. Well, tell me if I'm wrong, right? Once I switched my mindset to like, all right, I need to actually strengthen these muscles so that my body can, like, the spring can function the way the spring is supposed to do. Once I started doing exercises and I made my feet stronger, then I stopped having the issues, and now I can run at very high volume, um,
Correct.
and it's no
There's
longer.
something you did when you strengthened it that's really, really key that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But that's, I think you're exactly correct. The rest, ice, compression, elevation, the rice, right? That's old advice. It's somewhat helpful for the symptoms, but it will not allow you to train at the level that you wanted to when you caused your plantar fasciitis. Because the plantar fasciitis is the symptom, the pain there is the symptom of the imbalance in the tension of the feet. It could be due to trigger points, scar tissue, and other stuff like that. Um, and so it's not good. It's like it might help you feel a little bit better, but it doesn't solve the underlying problem. So you're exactly correct there. What I love to tell people is like, look, in this triangle where you have the calf in the back and the arch in the bottom and the shin muscles in the front, the calf was always shown as the bad guy.
Mm,
It's like the calf is too tight. That's why it's pulling on your heel. And then the arch in the middle, underneath your foot hurts. That's the problem. Well, that ignores one of the three players in the arch. You have the shin muscles in the front. And so one of the things that happens is if you do not stretch the shin, it's pushing the arch down by pulling the toes up. So like the same way, if I take my hand here and I want to pull this up, there's automatically like my palm is dropping down. The same's happening in your foot where the arch is dropping down when your toes get pulled up by those shin muscles. So I have some pictures here. Again, hopefully we can insert these here for you guys and talk about it. If not, we can find links to them or something that we can put
yeah.
up in the comments. We'll make sure and have something there for you guys. Um, but the big things you need to do is you need to get the big toes back online. There's a lot of people have fake bunions or false bunions because their toes turn to the inside. They just see the joint. So like the same way, if I were to take this index finger right here and I were to push this inside, see that? Oh God, see this big horrible bump right here? Bring it back.
Yep.
What bunion? I cannot tell you how many people a week I tell that. It's at least two or three people a week that I'm just like, I have bunions. I'm like, you don't have bunions. Like, how do you know? I was like, watch. And I just move their toe back. It's not fixed. It's not fused. It's not permanent. It's just muscle. So you got to stretch these. So
Yeah.
I like to put a rubber band around the big toes, put a yoga block between the toes, and just watch my favorite show. And it stretches the muscles that are on the toe side and helps the big toes come back towards each other so that they're straight with the inside of the arch. The second thing you do is you stretch your toes by putting them underneath your foot. Make sure it's padded. Don't do this on a hardwood floor. Don't do this on a tile floor. It will hurt like hell. But you tuck your toes underneath your foot.
Okay.
And then there's two ways you can stretch it. You can either drop your heel back. So we're going to pretend this is my heel. Is your toes tucked underneath, and then you drop it back, and you can see that it forces more stretching across here.
Hmm.
Or you can push the heel forward, at which point it'll stretch more into what would be your shin here.
Gotcha.
This is my arm, obviously. Um, but that's how you would do that. You want to make sure that you're stretching for at least a minute per muscle that you're trying to stretch. If you're stretching at 25, 30, 45 seconds and you feel it like give way, like release just a little bit, like it's suddenly willing to go an extra eighth to a quarter inch, You can either keep going to the next release or you can stop there.
Mm,
So
okay.
there's a whole neurological thing where in order to stretch well, the brain has to feel comfortable at that distance and then say, okay, I'll give you a little bit more. Cool. Now that's one stretch. And then if you want to go back for more, you can. But if you stop before then, you haven't really gotten the benefit of the stretch. So push, breathe, relax. Positive imagery helps. Imagining blood flow to the muscle, imagining the thing letting go, and then as soon as it does, you're at a decision point. You can either keep going, get more release out of the muscle, or you just move on to the next muscle you want to stretch. Both are fine. So that's the second thing. I like to recommend toe spreaders. Very, very cheap. Like price chop this stuff on Amazon, man. It's like $5, $10 for a decent set. Silicone, it spreads your toes out and keeps them from all cramping up on the inside of your shoe.
Yeah.
If your shoe toe box is too narrow to allow your toes with toe spreaders in there, you need new shoes.
Which I'm sure the majority of shoes that we wear today are way too narrow, right?
A lot of them, mostly dress shoes. Exercise shoes have started to have a slightly wider toe box recently, especially with like no bull shoes and some
Yeah.
of those other than that aesthetic with the wider toe box. Now the no bull doesn't have a great toe box, but it's better than some others if you're not looking to spend like $200 or $300 versus $150 for a good set of shoes. But one of the things I've found out in 31 years here on this planet is that good shoes are worth it.
Yeah.
They really are, especially if you're trading with any decent amount of volume. It's
Yeah.
a good investment. So that's the third thing there. And then the fourth thing would be here, let me see. Oh, yeah, if you want to do arch supports, semi rigid arch supports. So people will get Dr. Scholl's and from Walmart or something like that, and they're cheap. And sometimes it does it for them. Like sometimes it does. But the interesting thing is that when you take or especially a running step, you're inducing 4 times your body weight in terms of peak force, somewhere in that ballpark. So I weigh 205, so it's about 800 pounds. That little Dr. Scholl's arch support isn't doing crap for my foot. So I have a set of semi-rigid ones in my combat boots. So if I'm going on a ruck or if I'm laying down some long distance, pure rigid would cause bone bruise. If there's no give whatsoever, it's going to bruise the tissues, the nerves, which will take a while to heal. Nerves take a while. And then the bones and the joints, it'll just bruise them. So don't get perfectly rigid arch supports. In my experience, that has not proven to be helpful at all. So you kind of got to thread the needle there. But yeah, if you're doing that, you're stretching. If the inside of your foot feels hot to you, I'd use ice because it's inflamed. It has enough blood flow. Now you need to cool it down. But if you feel that inside of your foot and it's cold, does not have enough blood flow, please do not use ice. It does not need more cold. It needs warm. So apply a heating pad to the inside and do the stretches. So that's what I'd recommend, man. And doing that, I've had people at church that I just gave these tips to, and they came back like 2 weeks later, like, dude, my plantar fasciitis is 50% gone, and I've increased my mileage.
Yeah.
That's great, perfect,
That
and
is,
that's free. It's free. It's
yeah,
easy. You know,
that's awesome. Yeah.
yeah. And it takes like 2 to 4 visits with me. Other chiropractors, they're like, oh, plantar fasciitis is like super stubborn. Shockwave therapy is very effective, but it's also quite expensive. Take your pick. I'd say start the free stuff. Use the free stuff first. And if that helps you, great.
Yeah.
Save $2,000. But if it doesn't work, then go spend the $2,000 and then you have functional feet, and that's worth it.
Do you subscribe to the same idea that Carrie does as well, that he likes to say motion is lotion? Would you say
Yes, he does.
someone who's suffering from plantar fasciitis should like get out and walk, like you said, if they feel like they need to have, you said the temperature of the bottom of their foot, right? They
Right.
need to move that muscle at all?
Yes. So the only thing that'll kill you faster than too much workload and overwhelm is immobility.
Too little.
So yeah, you want to find the just right. And I like to think of it in terms of a budget. If I gave you $100 to go spend on something, and you go out and spend 150, you're going to be in pain.
Right.
You spent money you didn't have.
Yeah.
But if you go out and you spend zero, you're just going to have this whole stack of like, I'm not going to give you any more. Why?
Right.
Because you didn't even spend what I gave you, man.
Yeah.
Why would I give you any more? And so the body's the very same way. So if you exercise it appropriately, if you go out and you spend 80, 90, cool. If you went and spent 110, you came back and said, "Hey, I need a little more this time." Okay, but you're within reason. So the body can handle that budget being exceeded slightly, so long as you do the appropriate recovery afterwards. So like really listen to your body. If you have sharp pains, numbness, tingling, burning, shocking pains, like nerve type pains when you're doing something, I usually recommend people lay off. If you have dull, achy, pulling, tight discomforts that are 0 to 4 out of 10, keep going. If that dull, achy, that stuff starts getting into 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 10, probably something you should be doing about it before you keep training. Just
Yeah.
because that, in order to display that amount of pain, we know that the amount of dysfunction in that joint or that part of the body has to exceed 40% dysfunction, at which point you're training compensations. You're not training the right way for your body to move. So it's probably something you should get looked at.
Awesome. That's great advice, man. I
Yes, sir.
appreciate it, dude. This was good, thorough. That's what I'm talking about. Hopefully, this is going to help some people.
Really, really hope it does, man. So I appreciate you interviewing me. For those who are watching, if you had questions from me, please go ahead and just comment down below. I'll be checking this, monitoring it, and answering those for you. And if there's somebody you know who has that foot pain, can't walk as far as they want to, and definitely can't train the way they want to, please share it with them. Again, I hope this is helpful. The free stuff, like try it first. If you still need somebody, go find somebody. If I can be a resource for you, a 10 to 15-minute phone call with me is always free.
Heck yeah. And, if you guys find this helpful, let us know what we should tackle next. Maybe we can do another topic here.
There
See
you
what
go.
the, see what the good people are afflicted with. See what we need to talk about. So, uh,
Absolutely.
Dr. Nelson, I appreciate it, man.
Carter, thank you, sir.
All right, dude. We'll talk to you.